I was really thrilled, Reg, when you and David approached me about doing this piece, and then, even more thrilled when I knew that Misha would be able to do it with us. And you're going to hear me bragging about Misha quite a bit tonight, which will be uncomfortable for him and great for me. But a lot of those early conversations were talking with Misha, and also interestingly enough, our sound designer on also the original production, and they are also friends, Stowe Nelson, both of whom really helped us get set up for this process of sending mics and equipment to actors' homes and getting each of those spaces set up to be able to create miniature studios, which of course Misha will be able to speak to better. And then I think there's this incredible benefit to having directed a different production, but a three-dimensional production before a live audience, because I had a sense of the physical space, like the physical spaces of each world and where audiences tended to react, and the beats and the pacing of how things, how this works in a physical realm. And so to have that fleshed out in my mind's eye and then approach an audio production was very helpful. And then Misha, to again his endless credit, and these incredible actors were able to inhabit those spaces through their own imaginations and create that vividness for us, although now it's through our ears. So that's how we approached it, with a lot of specificity and imagination on our part that I believe does and will translate through headphones to those who are listening.
I think what's interesting is that this particular collaboration, I think, is founded on a lot of trust, and I just want to sort of name that. The process was very quick, as you've acknowledged. Because of the subject of the play, we had to get it done by like it just needed to happen. I remember having the conversation and like acknowledging that it would be great to have a little bit more time, but it just needs to happen right now. So there was a lot of trust. It's a dissimilar process from what it would be in a regular theater where we get to be in the room together. Although we have been able to find some opportunities to sort of collaborate together. So, but to sort of quickly talk through the process, we've been able to have actual rehearsals. We set up where we can be all in sort of virtual space together through some magic of technology, giving our actors the opportunity to actually respond to each other in real time and record these scenes, which is, I think, crucial for a play like this, which is so much about dialogue and the rhythm and the pacing of it. But part of it required it is very challenging for the director in this medium to sort of to understand what is being captured, because so much work happens after the recording. So there was a lot of sort of conversation happening during the recording of assessing, did we get the take, did we not? And that's where sort of the trust comes in, where Marti sort of would trust me to say, like, I think we got it. The next phase will be, we'll get the pacing in post-production, which is just a very different experience than you would in a regular production. And so what's interesting is about this process from regular theater is that the directing doesn't stop with the actors leaving the room. Actually, like, the directing continues once the voices have been recorded. And then, but we've been able to actually set up, like, listen to the session together, even though we are both in Chicago, but we're still sort of separate in distance. And so at that point, I've been able to sort of essentially dial her into my studio and being able to play it and being able to stop, like, actually, can we decrease this, add a little bit of a beat here, decrease this, overlap, whatever it is, and continue building it. But there were definitely stretches of time where I was just on my own in my sort of mad science lab, and then delivering the thing, and then have people respond to it?
I mean, a major shout out to our actors here who were just able to dive into the deep end and make something that is so vivid and really condense. Um, you know, uh, uh, Two members of our cast were in the 2018 production, two members of our cast were not, and all of them were able to just really condense what would be a much longer process and make something that feels so lived in so quickly. So that is an enormous testament to them. I feel that this is one of those processes where you get to really appreciate a particular aspect of an actor's craft, which is how quickly they can work. And I know that they had work and advanced work and homework and all those things, but like how quickly someone can make something that is so detailed and rich in these condensed circumstances. So there was that. And then I really, it's very tedious in some ways, like the amount you listen, which gave me a deeper appreciation for Misha's work, and also for our audio engineer Ben, who was totally fantastic. But I really enjoy that. Like it's hard. You get fatigued, but I really enjoy that. Like being able to listen to 5 takes of a line back to back to back and sort of have my own internal dialogue about the merits of each, or to be spending time with Misha in his studio, even though I'm remote. I mean, we're remote to each other. Being able to like understand what, like, how do you calibrate the rhythm of humor, right? Like for instance, because the actors are so good at that, right? Like they have that natural banter, but if you pull things apart or put them back together or take one line from here and another line from there, you sort of find yourself either creating or recreating dynamics that existed organically. But I really found that exciting. I liked sort of discovering all the ways that we could deepen what was already these really fantastic interactions. And it also gave me this appreciation sometimes of some of the nuances that the actors were doing in the takes that I couldn't even necessarily catch in the moment because I was thinking about what my direction for the next thing was or whatever it was. So that I found to be really thrilling. And then once we got to the point where Misha really ended up like bringing in his composition and his soundscapes, the thing just came to life where it just took leaps and bounds, like every 24 hours of this last week of the process, just thanks to his incredible work and diligence on expanding what we have into a full world.
There's an exercise of imagination that is happening in the rehearsal room. And actually, it's interesting. I think an important shout out to our dramaturg who provided images of like, this is what the space looks like. Like this is the bar that they're having this conversation in. This is what a chill, like here's the booth at Chili's, right? Like, so it helps kind of paint a picture. And what's interesting is that assist is useful not just in the rehearsal room because it places people. The biggest challenge right now, we're all in separate spaces. We need to imagine that we're in the same space. But actually in post-production, those images were also helpful as well. You without boring into technical details, different spaces sound different. It's not just what's in there, but the way voices sound in those spaces. And there's an effort that was made on our part to there's an interesting process that happens. Everybody records in their spaces and different spaces sound different. So then what you got to do is you got to strip away as best you can the sound of that space, like the sound of a closet. We had somebody record in a closet, the sound of their bedroom, the sound of their studio that they built. And then, so everything is very neutral and it sounds very disorienting and very foreign to us because our ears use those contextual clues of the way space is to sound to orient ourselves. If any of you have ever had an experience of going into an anechoic chamber, which is perfectly treated, so there's no reflections, it feels almost nauseating because we're not used to sort of not having that information. So you strip all that away, and then you apply if it's a space this big, it would sound like this. There would be these sort of sounds. So even if it's an empty room has a sound to it. So it's applying that a little bit to try to help the illusion that these two people who were hundreds of miles apart are actually in a room 3 feet away from each other. So that's part of the work that sort of happens in post.
Reg, for you and studio to sort of say, we are going to put the work in to ensure the safety of these artists, and we are going to trust that what they create is going to be evocative and worthy of our time and our funding and our audience's time. That was really thrilling. And I sort of got into it knowing who the collaborators were, knowing who you were, and knowing studio. And so I knew that it was going to be something that I would be proud of. But as I was listening to it today, I was like, I want everyone to hear this. I mean, there were moments where I would hear Misha's timing with one of the actors' takes, and I burst out loud. I burst out laughing out loud. And I've heard it 500 times. Do you know what I mean? And so I want everyone to hear this and get the chance to experience it. And I also think it's one of those pieces. Sarah Burgess is such an extraordinary writer, and we get a sense here of just how prescient her work was when she originally penned it, and how much it has predicted the moment that we're in and speaks to it so urgently. So that's also something that's really thrilling, is just sort of, I think we're in a moment where many things are being written for audio, and that is thrilling. But to actually work on something that was written for theater and put it in an audio context, I find thrilling in a totally different way, because you do sort of have to engage to keep up with the piece, and I like that.
It is my sincere hope that there is a hunger for this kind of work and a place for this kind of work, and also acknowledging, much against our sort of the turbulence of trying to do this quickly, this was done in less than a month, and so suddenly there becomes an opportunity for immediacy and quick reaction to something, right? Like, this was definitely an adaptation of a previous thing, but being able to respond to the moment. This work can be modular, right? Like, it's a major undertaking and a major ask of an audience of almost like 100 minutes of their time. There's a reason why a lot of this work exists in like short 20-minute, 30-minute, but suddenly that just seems to create more opportunities for theater. Like, we would never think to do a 20-minute play, but a 20-minute audio experience that is not just storytelling, but somehow dives into music or dives into response to other media. Suddenly there's ways to engage with an audience in a very sort of visceral and immediate ways that could complement. So Marty mentioned, like, this is a production that has happened, and now we get to interpret it. Imagine creating a play that is running somewhere live, and then it has these sort of other episodes of this play that exists in parallel to it. I keep using Marvel Universe as an example, but something that they've been really good at is creating storylines that exist on multiple sort of levels and multiple medium. Like, it's comic books, it's audio, it's film, it's TV, it's books. And so suddenly it can be very sort of a well-rounded experience that can work as a standalone, but also to complement and really enrich the engagement with a story, with a subject, and whatever else.
Just a reminder of trust your taste and trust your team. And I am really, again, grateful for Misha, because and for these actors, because there were moments in this where I would give a note that I would never give if we had weeks and weeks of a process, right? Where I would say, can you just say that line faster? Like, can you put 2 beats before this word, or whatever it was, just because I knew rhythmically in my head what the results had to be. And we sort of hit the end of the amount of takes we could get in experimentation. So I had to just be really direct and really technical. And the actors were so game for that. And likewise with Misha, just, even if I don't necessarily understand the form yet, it doesn't mean that I'm not going to be meticulously discerning. And so letting Misha is very there for that process, and letting that taste guide the process while I learn what are good steps and what are missteps along those lines. So that makes me feel good in terms of, yes, a form might be new, but if you have trust with your collaborators, if they're new or old or whatever it is, and you can trust your own taste and commitment to something, you're going to get where you need to go. Theater is very ephemeral, as we know. It's there and then it's gone. So having something that can exist a little bit longer as a testament to what we've built and isn't trying to do the same thing, but as Misha said, there are parts of it that feel like telling a story around a campfire. To me, I always feel like it's a bedtime story. Not that someone's trying to put me to sleep, but I always loved having someone read to me, and that ability. This is why an empty room is never an empty room, as to Misha's point before. But the intimacy of entering someone else's head as not just an escape, but as its own art form. I mean, I think about this when people, as all these different forms have evolved and people said, oh, like it's going to be the death of the novel. And it's not, in fact, true, right? Like, I don't think theater is going to die. I actually think there's a way to embrace the media and the mediums that are up and coming, and to allow that to make theater more theatrical, and each of these specific practices more whatever they are. So the more that we can have a partner experience in different modalities that can increase access, as you also pointed out, Reg, in terms of your and studio's decision to make this free, that to me gets really exciting in terms of scope, in terms of reach, in terms of broadening the conversation about who we're making this for. It was all one take. No, it wasn't. But I do, as I was listening to it today, it really, to me, sounds like it is. So for all intents and purposes, please believe, and you are right, that it is mostly one take, and it is all in the spirit of the same take. But no, not only did we do multiple run-throughs of the whole thing, we also did scene by scene, in quite a cinematic or television sense. And then all of those things were merged together.
It's a challenging thing, right? There's a reason why studios are what they are, and it's a combination of external noises. Like Marty's dealing with her train. So we've had some of our actors, they're parenting at home. They have their kids, they have their animals, and so it's navigating, like, this is the room that is furthest away from my child, type of thing. And then closets are surprisingly good, and a lot of it has to do with the fact that all that clothing and all that soft surfaces help absorb extraneous reflections and echoes and things like that. One of our actors had to bring a ladder and hang blankets behind him just to absorb some of it, because there's only that much we can do to strip away the room sound without affecting the voice. And so, but I gotta say that a lot of actors are forced to do this now more and more. Many of them are self-taping, they're recording from home. And so people are building their own sort of small recording studios